Launching. Hey, my dudes. Welcome back. Carter Bitsy tripping. And we got a good one today. It's post-ETH merge. And now comes the time where we actually start to peel back some of what's out there. I know a lot of folks just kind of focused on ETH, didn't look back. And then now we're kind of pulling back the covers and seeing what else is out there, along with not just, you know, from a coin price, all that piece, but what can you do from a utility standpoint? And that's why post-merge, the first thing we're looking at right now is Flux. And with us today, I imagine a lot of folks out there know who we're going to be talking to here, with Daniel Keller and Davy Wittock. And how do you say your last name? Wittock?
Wittock, yeah.
We just call him Dave. We just call him
Just
Davy.
Davy is fine.
He'll be fine with Davy.
I want to make sure I get it right. I'm terrible at enunciation sometimes on things. So, yeah, we're gonna peel this back, guys. I sent them essentially kind of a rough agenda ahead of this. So I want to make sure that this isn't prescriptive, and what they're going to be coming up with and just talking about is things that are related to the network itself. I just wanted to make sure we had a basic outline, because anybody that follows my channel knows that I can go very deep down one little rabbit hole and not come out of it. And then next thing you know, we're at like 4 hours. So we're going to do a quick overview.
Same. I can do the exact same thing.
I didn't plan for 4 hours, let's be honest.
Yeah. And so we're going to go through a quick overview and provide them some opportunity to just kind of let everybody know what Flux is, a mission, schedule, rewards, team, all that kind of stuff. We'll get into some of the mining aspects. We'll talk some parallel assets. And then we're going to go into really what I'm super interested in is on the application development and the DApp deep dive side when it comes to like core memory settings, deploying things. I want to kind of peel that back some and then really set us up for any other kind of videos that we can have coming out that are going to be complementary to this, to make sure people understand from a utility how we can leverage Flux in that capacity, which puts demand on the chain and puts, you know, a counterparty that would be purchasing the tokens that miners are actually creating and upholding for security, both node and on the miner side. And then we'll talk briefly governance, change control, protocol level stuff, and then kind of how does one enter the Flux ecosystem, being, you know, open source, different projects, and give some space to that. So that's kind of the overarching overview. And just to make sure we can try to make this a very fulfilled video for folks that want to know more about Flux. So I'm going to pause myself. I'm going to get right into it with you, Daniel, allow you guys to kind of do your piece there and kind of give everybody kind of a quick overview, at least for our audience that haven't had much experience maybe with Flux until now, this post-ETH merge.
Well, first of all, Carter, I'd like to thank you for inviting us on. I've enjoyed watching your videos for a very long time, especially the build outs that you've done. And I think there's a Mustang in there that I'm quite jealous of as well. So, you know, love what you do, man. You're a big supporter of this space, and we really do appreciate it. So thank you for having us on and giving us the opportunity. So I'm Daniel Keller. For those that don't know, Daniel Keller, Chief Strategy Officer for Flux, co-founder. You know, Flux is basically a decentralized compute network. In layman's terms, we're kind of like the AWS on blockchain. So we're the largest decentralized compute network out there. There are other, you know, decentralized compute networks that they're not necessarily decentralized. It's ran by our community. So essentially our node operators act as decentralized system administrators. So they deploy their nodes and run our applications. So Flux has been around for 4.5 years. We're not the new kid on the block. We were Zell before we were Flux. About 1.5 years ago, we rebranded and really got down to brass tacks on how we were going to build out the next iteration of we call it proof of use of work. So our focus is really putting it's a coin for the people by the people. There, you know, no VCs. You can't buy into Flux. You can't take, you know, equity in the project. You can't. I mean, you have to, for exposure to the asset, or to the project, you have to actually buy the asset. So that's a big deal. So we have a very educated community. We have over 14,000 nodes running globally right now. Those are all enterprise grade infrastructure that's deployed across the world. So we're honestly we're as we go through this ETH merge, people are finding Flux for the very first time, and they're like, where the hell have these guys been? You know what I mean? But we've been here all along. But we have been focused on building and iterating. So we don't just build in bear markets. We build in bull markets. We build in, sideways chop, you name it. We're building, and it's taken us about 4.5 years to get where we're at now today. So we're actually really in a good spot because we're deploying. Whether you're running a website or an Oracle or front end or a back end or whatever level of infrastructure, if you can Dockerize it, you can put it on Flux, which makes it very unique. And we've worked and focused on basically developing a very seamless feel. So it feels like you're using AWS. It doesn't make sense to make it clunky and crypto-like, right? Because we know clunky and crypto. So what we've really concentrated on is that user interface, that UI UX piece. So we're doing stuff that has never been done before, and we're really excited to share a little bit about the project.
So yeah, I want to peel back just in that quick overview, especially on that separation on the emission schedule and all that split between both folks that would do the GPU mining, so folks that are just finding this video and are trying to wonder how to participate. You can participate using a GPU miner right now, provide hashes to a network. It's lends a lot more, I think, functionality towards the NVIDIA side right now. I know that there's been some updates on the AMD side, especially the latest gen GPUs on AMD getting a performance boost. But from a node provider, that's a little an additional thing. So this is split emissions, correct? And you have 3 tiers on the those nodes. I have a couple questions on those. So one of them being probably the strongest, and anybody that has any background in cloud services, availability zones, geographic area, when you're setting up, you're kind of, even if you're just setting up a game server and you're on, G Portal or something, and you're like, I'm going to pick US East because maybe I'm in the East Coast, and you're trying to get as close ping as you can. Functionality on those nodes, geolocation, that kind of stuff. Is that stuff available? Is there bandwidth requirements? A lot of that ingress egress is a key piece of any kind of cloud infrastructure. I mean, how does Flux kind of handle that kind of piece of it?
Carter, did you ever see Step Brothers? Where they're standing out there and they said, "Do we just become best friends?" We did, because you hit on all the points that
every single one of them.
Every single one of them. Like, you literally did your research. We recently released Geo Locations. So, the whole purpose of having a decentralized network is if I'm a project, like let's say it's whether it's KDA or Haven or Pivx or Kasama or Polkadot that's deployed infrastructure on Flux, right? I want it to be geographically dispersed. I just want it to go out into the ether, so to speak, and just deploy my nodes. But if you want to be regulatory compliant, or you have a particular use case that's important, like maybe game servers, you need geolocations. So Flux recently deployed the first version of geolocations, and now we've deployed the second version of geolocations, which will allow you to basically isolate and pick in your region, and you can drill down. So I don't want to have a game server. If I'm sitting in California, I don't want a game server in Germany, right? I need something that's been deployed locally. So the folks that are they're confined to having that, low latency, low ping times, high availability. That's exactly what Flux does, and it isn't a proof of concept. It's real, and it's launched today. So yeah, I mean, Davy, you want to expand on that at all?
Well, no, not really. You covered most of it. Actually, both of you covered most of it. You, as the decentralized system administrator, as we call them, you deploy your node at home or at a VPS, wherever you pick. We know where that node is hosted, and then we can deploy an application, a website, your business that's focused on the US, or your business that's focused in Europe, we can tailor it that it's going to be shown at the region you're aiming for. So if you're deploying something in Germany, it makes no sense that the website is running in the US. You want to have it close by, preferably even in Germany. If you run something that's not allowed in a certain country or in a state, for instance, with I think with geolocation too, then we can now exclude certain areas too, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, it's you can be regulatory compliant. So it's like it's the best of both worlds. You can be cypherpunk, send it anywhere, lots of nodes, or you can actually get down and drill down to even the regions, Carter. So you can get down into like the weeds. I would say our ultimate goal is to get it even into like a city. So maybe you want to deploy nodes specifically in New York City or something of that nature. So that's a big piece.
Nice.
And then as a technologist, one of the pieces that I'm sure you're interested in as well is Flux is ingrained in every part of the infrastructure. So whether you're running a node, you need Flux. If you're deploying a server, you need Flux. If you're deploying front end or back end, you need Flux. And Oracle, you need Flux. If you are using Zelcore, you need Flux. You get where I'm going with this, right? Self-sovereign IDs, LID, you need Flux. Decentralized two-factor authentication, you need Flux. As a business leader, though, I need to be able to plan appropriately to deploy my infrastructure. So right now, today, if I'm using AWS, I know exactly what I'm putting in my capital budget so that I know, or my operational budget, so that I know exactly what I'm deploying. Right now, the way that Flux stands today is you deploy using the asset. Well, we're taking it a step further with Jetpack 2.0, and we're going to be giving the option to deploy directly with fiat. Why is that important? Well, now Dan, the business leader, can now budget appropriately and not depend on the fluctuation of the Flux price up and down. I have a peg that I'm now pegged to. Here's the kicker. Everything that settles in fiat is then converted to Flux. So the payment mechanism in the back end still requires Flux. So whether you're pegged to the euro or you're the dollar or the ruble or whatever it is, and that's how you're budgeting appropriately, and that's how you're deploying, it's still settled in Flux. So it really is the ultimate utility asset. It's exactly how we laid it out, so that it makes it super simple, super seamless for people to deploy infrastructure.
I'm going to add one more thing to this.
Yeah,
before you go, Carter, because that's something that a lot of people seem to be misconceiving these days with masternodes, because that's basically what that is still. We don't follow the burn method here, right? So it's not like you invest that money, you buy your nodes, and it gets all burned up. That's not happening here. You lock your coins in. You can get those coins back at any given time. That is a really big important piece to understand in our economy. There's a lot of coins out there that don't follow this at this point anymore. But I do want to make sure that people understand that if you invest in this, it's not like your investment is gone, and you have to make it all back until you break even and then start making money. That's not the case.
And pray you make it back, right? So
and pray you make it back,
because there's a lot of them that they rip, But
you're not having to wait for a hard fork that may come at some point in time to unlock your coins. I swear I will not have too many shots with ETH today, but there's some question there.
You mean Fed coin? I joke. I kid.
Shots fired.
So, why we could cover a ton on the mining side, and we will get into the mining side. I think this is one of the key differentiators of why, just as I've been exploring the various alternatives in this space right now, of how far that feature set has made it, immediately you start getting questions, especially if you're like from an infrastructure standpoint. So that it looks like when you first start an instance, like, so if I'm going to take it right back to, like, if you're going out there to do the run on Flux, you come to the site, you want to deploy an app or a Docker container, essentially it's giving you those 3 instances. That's what it's the basic quality of services. 3 instances. You start with a certain amount of RAM, a certain amount of storage. Now that RAM, that storage, all of that runtime is running on those nodes, correct? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, everything is decentralized. There's no There's no centralized component to it. There's no we're not rolling in a colo data center somewhere that, you maybe have 3 locations and that's where you're calling decentralized, right? So, and I'll tell you, I mean, Flux, you're either the cheapest, the biggest, or the first, or the best, and I think that Flux is all of those, because if you go to deploy a standard website, so and you mentioned about the deployment model, right? So AWS is about $90 and you get 1 instance, right? And you better hope like hell that instance doesn't go down, right? Azure is close to that as well, and then you got DigitalOcean and other. They're all in around about the same price. Flux is like $10 and you get 3 instances. So, it's completely redundant. And the nice thing about it is, if hypothetically, say a node goes down somewhere, it immediately spawns another node so that you have that high level of redundancy. So it's just a fail safe. And why is that important? Well, new businesses, maybe even blockchain based businesses that don't have all the resources in the world to deploy massive scale of infrastructure can now do it on Flux very affordably and, very redundant. So, as a systems administrator, I sit back and I look at like, how do I back up my data? How do I keep it persistent? How do I, make sure that I have failovers? And these are all the things. This Flux was designed by the systems administrators who need all of those components. So, it's a little bit of everything, I would say.
Interesting. So, and I swear, folks, we're going to get to the mining. I got just one more. So on the ingress and, just use of, I'll use terms that if you're not familiar with cloud stuff, like the bandwidth usage, for folks not fully tracking, typically that's charged, like they'll let you kind of upload whatever you want, but that stuff that they're serving out is usually where the cost comes, because they're having to serve it to X amount of customers, right? So how is that handled? Like if you get a popular, let's say you deploy a website or maybe a smart contract or a DApp, and it starts getting tons of volume, you can span those instances, I would assume, on there. I haven't done it yet, so I'm genuinely asking these questions. Like, no, you can span them post.
Yeah, on demand. And I'll give you a perfect example, Carter. There's probably in the life of a crypto project, right? There's no bigger event than being uplisted to Binance, right? So 10 o'clock at night, I'm sitting on the couch, I'm half asleep. I get a tweet and it says Flux is listed on Binance. Okay, so I run downstairs. I pull all the guys on the call. I said, "What's up? We're getting ready to uplist. What are we going to do?" Well, if people know anything about Flux, they know that it's not just Flux, but there's parallel assets that come with Flux, and we can get into those later. So we knew there was going to be the highest demand on the network ever, right then and there, because there was going to people that wanted to go for main chain. They want to go to Binance Smart Chain. They go to Binance or the Flux ETH. And they were going to use Fusion. So I asked the guys, I said, okay, what's degrading? Where are we going to have problems? Well, we have an issue with our block explorers. They're crashing. Okay, what's the solution? Trunk, who is our innovation officer, he sits there, he thinks about it for a minute. He says, let's just deploy 150 block explorers. 15 minutes later, we had 150 block explorers running. And okay, so Fusion is struggling. We can't, people getting their swaps back and forth. It's okay. Let's stand up 50 more versions of Fusion. It's an on-demand scaling mechanism so that when people run into situations like this, let's face it, we have been in the crypto space long enough to know anytime the price fluctuates up or down, every damn exchange goes down. Everybody has problems. And why is that? Is they haven't planned appropriately to scale appropriately. And that's exactly where Flux comes into play. Coinbase, go ahead.
Yeah. No. I was going to jump in there just on there to kind of maybe help some of the conversation with, like, so typically that would be done like I'm behind an F5, like in a commercial infrastructure, I'm behind like an F5, it's a load balancer, it's going to take all that on-demand traffic, it's going to separate that based on configuration, and it's going to serve up predicated on, availability zones and all that. So I'm assuming there's a load balance in there somewhere or something
Absolutely.
That's like it. Okay.
Yes. So we have a Flux domain manager that helps with that. We have load balancing integrated as well, so that That way we can make sure that, no one particular instance takes the brunt of whatever it is. And we have on-demand scaling. So, for instance, I'll use Cadena as a example here. Cadena, I don't know, this was probably 6 months ago. They had a unique attack, and it basically targeted their nodes. So they had nodes that were running on AWS, and then of course they had the Flux nodes that had been deployed. We deployed 1,000+ nodes for Cadena. They were able to target those centralized nodes and take them down. The ultimate goal was the attacker didn't realize that there was Flux nodes in the equation. He viewed it as, or they viewed it as, we can attack those nodes directly. We can take them down. If we take all the nodes down, we brick the chain, right? So what happened with Flux is as they attempted to take the Flux nodes down, they would kill one, instantaneously another one would pop up. So they were literally for hours and hours playing whack-a-mole back and forth, trying to take this network down. And Flux acted as a wetland, essentially keeping those nodes up, keeping those nodes functioning, keep the chain moving forward. So we were able to, once we realized the attack vector, we were able to deploy an extra, 500 nodes, 600 nodes on demand. And really that's what Flux is in a nutshell. It really is a wetlands that allows decentralized projects, or really any project in the standard tech stack, or really any tech stack, to have that decentralized footprint and also have that on-demand scalability.
That's pretty. I mean, just so in another life, having to handle a lot of Kubernetes pods and being able to respin up, dead instances and stuff like that. Very familiar with that space. So seeing that in this fashion makes it very interesting. From like what's turning through my head is like cloud native co-location of multi-cloud environments. So you could have essentially load balancers sitting on front of those. So if you did want to have a multi-tenant environment, there's an opportunity here especially for any commercial folks that are listening, from what I'm hearing. And I'm going to peel this back. I'm actually going to load some servers up on this just to test myself. We'll take it through a live stream if we have to.
I double dog dare you, Carter. Let's do it.
I just think it'd be an interesting trial and error here, because, a lot of discovery happens with any kind of greenfielding, right? So like if you're trying to set up something that can then co-locate onto a decentralized website, it does give you that kind of attack vector. I wouldn't say protection, it just gives you another layer, right? Because
a layer,
yeah, it's just another layer of service availability. But yeah, I mean, that's why I'm really kind of focused on this. I know that folks want to hear about mining, especially with Ethereum moving from it, but I'm looking at it from like, this is like pivoting the concept of participation around to first starting with here's capability. And, oh, by the way, security architecture is done through, proof of work mining and your node provider, versus it starting with the token and price, right? Because I think the availability, high demand, the want and need of that services will drive the demand. We see that on the Ethereum side with like NFTs and dog pictures.
Great babe.
This is more tangential to substance and use and functionality, and business commerce, a whole bunch of other things that generate more revenue than just instances of NFTs. So it does definitely spark my interest on what the capability is, even if it's like in the beginning of its infancy of what it could be. Because you go through different, from a business standpoint. I'm trying to give everybody in the audience kind of a perspective of like how you would rate or get a certification, for a business continuity and all that kind of stuff. There's like ratings like that businesses will use of like saying, hey, uptime and all that. So, if it's the government, they do all these impact levels, right? IL1 through 5 or 6, and that's also security classifications. And you kind of go through this gauntlet of validation and protection. Hey, can you have uptime? Can you do all these different services? And looking at just, even if you're not trying to get that certification, but you're looking at like what's required on that list, and then how does this stack up against that? It also kind of lays out your roadmap of potential targeting potentially small business to have a competitor in the AWS space, especially when you start having more communities build templates around things, templates around Docker containers that have been optimized to run on something like Flux. I'm super interested in that, because this is kind of what that, I would say, the 2017 promise was, when we were talking about like taking computation, if it was going to be Golem on Ethereum, or if it was render token or any of this, like a functionality and a service that leverages the stack in such a way that circumstantially the token economy is what drives and fuels it. But there has to be that stack that's in front that really drives the demand side. And that's why I'm kind of focusing on that. But I'll pivot. We could talk about this stuff all day, and we definitely will when I start getting a server.
But,
well, hold on.
Yeah.
No,
One more-
I want to jump in there real quick, because Carter, I think you hit on something very important. And that is the fact that I believe that we are much more educated as miners and technologists today in 2022 than we were in 2017. So, conceptually, Flux was born in 2018 when we knew that we wanted to do a decentralized compute network, mostly around deplatforming and, people being taken down because of their political views or whatever. We realized there has to be another way. There has to be a better way. And we also knew too, as decentralization started to grow, it was going to need a framework, So I compare Flux to Amazon year 2. So they were selling books, but they were building a framework for much more delivery, and that's exactly what Flux is. So whether you say Pepsi or Coke, Docker or Kube, Flux will do them both. So, where our intentions are to deploy Kubernetes on our Titan infrastructure that we've worked with Lumens on as well. So, I think what it comes down to is this, and we've seen it with this Ethereum merge, and it really kind of warms my heart, because people ask the right questions. They're asking, what can this project do? What problem is it legitimately solving? It's not a fork of a fork of a fork of a fork, right? It actually is fixing, and it is creating the ability for every single project, whether you're proof of work or proof of stake, to become more decentralized in the end. And I think that is super important. So I think exactly what you said there was right on the money.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it just, the more visibility on how you get that, you start to end up getting a change of the type of content around the network too, where your Flux is there, the token and the economy is there, but the main discussion is the services that are there. So people start running, and like you'll get, there's this entire other ecosystem. And I like to pick on game servers because it's the quickest cradle to grave. People work all day. It's an entertainment space. They come home, they're with their friends, and they're like, you know what, let's spin up a Conan server, or let's spin up a 7 Days to Die server or something, and then they could go to G Portal, pay their $12 or whatever, or they can look at something that's an alternative that has, availability, and kind of starts in that kind of entertainment gaming. It's also not like critical infrastructure right away, so it gives people time to fix what would be equivalent to critical. I don't know. It depends on the type of the type of gaming community.
I don't know, man.
Sometimes they consider it critical gaming infrastructure.
I've seen my kids game, and I think it's pretty damn critical.
Right.
I mean, the stuff that comes out of their mouth and everything else. But I think you're right on the money. And the other thing too is, I think game servers and that whole decentralized gaming platform is the most underrated, undervalued piece of what will be the next iteration of our technology. And Flux especially has focused on the gaming sector. We've sponsored JS13K Gaming, Mazer Gaming. We are also looking to engage a couple big players in the space that want to test the water for Web3, like decentralized compute and servers. I mean, could you imagine Blizzard actually running on Flux? You could see it. So I think that's a highlight. Well, look, Carter, you remember when we had LAN parties? You're like my age, so you remember this stuff, right? We ripped our
mid-40s.
Yep, and we'd go and we'd have LAN parties. Everybody get together. We had a blast, right? And then, then it started morphing more toward, MMOs and stuff like that, World of Warcraft. And there was nothing worse than sitting there waiting for a server to come back online. You're in the middle of a raid, you're hitting a boss, and server just takes a crap. So imagine imagine, my server was Undermine on World of Warcraft. Imagine 3 versions of Undermine running all together with redundant data that if one goes down, it just deploys another one and you keep rolling. That's exactly what Flux was built.
Yeah, I think there's a huge, realm of possible on that concept, because then you also have your community, and we'll pivot this right into mining because I think it lays right into it, where you could have that gaming industry folks that have GPUs that can run, a single card on it. And I've always been a big proponent on this entire space since the beginning, since I made this channel in 2013. The whole reason why I made the channel was to make sure people could participate. This was yes, could prices go up?
You've been you've been here forever. I remember you way back when.
Yeah, I mean, I remember in 2013, it was like, we're looking and I'm like, there's nobody, I'm making comments on forums and helping people through stuff. And I'm like, there's no YouTube channel on this. It wasn't about the money and price. That is part of the business, quote unquote, because you have to run and you have to pay for people's time. And, it's just part of that nature of the beast. However, that entry into the space, if you have a single GPU and you can run at night when you get done gaming, you run it, your costs, you're factoring on that, you're decentralizing the emission. That right there, I think, bootstraps the innovation of people maybe going a little further on the participation on the development side, young developers. I've have like over 100,000 plus emails since starting BBT. And I would say a good portion, probably at least this year alone, 1,200. We were trying to categorize it. 1,200 emails from people reaching out that are developers, young developers that are like, hey, it's my first year, I'm right out of school. I'm trying to get into Web3. It's really hard. I don't understand on how to get into this space. And I'm like, at the end of the day, the way I tell people is it's just about getting a part of a community. So you reach out to a couple of the developers, you get on the Discord, you start kind of working with somebody, and you'll get spoon-fed a few little, maybe, hey, go check this, go into Git, connect to this, do a pull request, just learn this piece. You'll get spoon-fed into the community and then start trying to be able to contribute. Where this stack is, at least what I've seen so far, is that you already have a lot of the UIs out there. You have the deployment mechanisms and some pretty good tutorials out there that we'll use in one of the videos, to where now you're targeting not just the developer, but now you're talking the infrastructure guys. You're talking about the system admins, as you guys were just saying, where you got guys that maybe aren't doing development, and maybe a few of them are script kiddies, but at the end of the day, they can go and deploy an instance. They know Docker. They know how Kubernetes clusters work. They know how Swarm and a lot of the different tools, Chaos Monkey and all the other different testing tools work. Maybe they're not hardcore developers, but they are infrastructure guys and can provide in this space. So I think now you have this opportunity to also, have them also mining, but also contributing their knowledge of keeping companies running, right? I mean, their day jobs are running companies. And, the mining aspect, keeping that mining aspect to where people can, slowly participate, one single card, maybe they have a rig, being able to be part of it, I think is pretty key. The algorithm that's used, I mean, look, can you guys talk to the current algorithm? There's no any plans for changes or anything, right? I know there's some innovation when it came to the AMD drivers that came out, but for people that are looking to point their rigs, what would you point them to? Is there miners that you recommend? Anything like that?
One thing, and then I promise we'll start to talk to the miners. Okay, so because I think this is super important. You're very insightful when you talk about young talent coming into the space and wanting to get into Web3. Why is it so difficult to get into Web3? It's because it's nebulous. We in the blockchain space have this habit of giving terms like, oh, it's Web3, it's NFT, or oh, it's Web3, it's fintech, or oh, it's Web3, it's DeFi, right? Web3, when it comes down to it, really is infrastructure. It's what runs all the pretty things that you like. Flux isn't doing the glamorous stuff, right? It's not doing the pretty grape apes or the, awesome, dexes that everybody loves or this, that, or the other thing. What we're doing is we're running infrastructure. We're selling the pickaxes, the shovels, the pans, the jeans to the people in the gold rush. And I think that's important. And somebody that wants to come into the space and learn, they have to get down and really start to understand what Web3 truly is. I think there's 2 versions to it. I think there's an infrastructure version, and I think there's everything else. So, I think we as technologists need to be able to share with those young people coming in. Okay, you have to discern exactly what Web3 is. You can hear it's metaverse, you can hear it's DeFi, you can hear it's NFTs, but really what it comes down to is if all of these things were deployed on AWS, it is nothing more than legacy finance. It is nothing more than legacy technology. If you deploy these things on a decentralized compute network, that's Web3. And I think that's the biggest thing is people get confused with that. Now I'll let you go into mining. That was good. I had to point that out.
Yeah, no, that's, I think, part of what right now I think we're going to discover, as I say, the science project with proof of stake with Ethereum is it's not proven. And right now I think they have obviously an attack vector on the living on the AWS architecture, and it's no any one person's issue or problem. I think what it comes down to is it's just the least line of resistance, right? Like,
oh yeah,
if you're looking at it and you're like, I want to do this, but do I want to have the bare metal at my house? And what's the bandwidth usage? Is it going to saturate my network connection? Do I put a potential attack vector because now somebody's getting my IP? Do I put it behind a VPN? They start asking all these questions, and then they go, or I can click loot on AWS for $19.99 a month and just deploy my node, right? And they're going to go that route, and then it's a victim of circumstance to a point, but it is the reality. And then now that becomes an attack vector where this kind of pivots and changes it a bit. And I mean, we could go like real deep on that, but like going on back to the mining side. So how does the community currently engage with like do you work with any of the, NB miner, any of the folks that are doing any of the mining? I know there's a Discord group, Telegram, I would assume. Like how do, is it completely, it's all open source, obviously, right now from the mining aspect on the development of that. But like, as an example, the latest update that came out for AMD, it's like a 20% boost. Is there any like dev funds or anything that's out there to kind of assist on trying to optimize any of that kind of stuff?
Okay, so we are very blessed. We had back when ASICs came to Zcash, because we have the same algorithm as Zcash, right? And all of a sudden ASICs pop up. We immediately stopped what we were doing and we said, no way, we're not doing that. That's centralized. And thank God we did, because Zcash just basically went into the bin, and that's the rest is history. But we made a commitment as a project to be ASIC resistant. And why is that? Because we value decentralization. We value the ability for the normal, just common person to be able to tune up a rig or even a graphics card in a gaming computer and be able to participate in the network. So we were very blessed to work with Lully Deeb, who is one of the best in the space, to help us create Zelhash, which is tried and true, been ASIC resistant, FPGA resistant, all the way up till today. And as a matter of fact, in my spy world, right, where I creep around Discords and look at stuff, FPGA producers said, we're not even going to attempt to do that because they've done it right. So, that speaks something. And then the next question is, okay, well, what if an FPGA or what if an ASIC was detected on the network tomorrow? What would happen? We'd fork. Simple as that. So if you're an ASIC manufacturer or you're an FPGA manufacturer and you're out there listening to this and you're thinking about messing with it, we'll just walk. You know what I mean? It's tried and true. We want to be GPU mineable. We're one of the only projects that's truly committed to being a truly decentralized GPU. There are other projects that do it as well. Raven's one of them. Other projects that are doing, GPU mineable. But it was super important to us. So Lully Deeb wrote the code, and as a matter of fact, he's the one that continues to keep developing LOL Miner. We have MiniZ that they're awesome. They participate as well. We knew going into this ETH merge, we had to get better with AMD. Flux was kind of weighted heavily to the NVIDIA side, so we knew we had to equalize it. And we did that with, working with Lully Deeb and LOL Miner and MiniZ. And I think that it's been very beneficial for us.
There's going to be, it's hard because, a lot of people come in there and they're like, hey, what about the Polaris cards? It's like on some day it just
Where
puts
do
to
you
rest. It's
You
put
got to
to
draw
rest.
the line. Yeah, you got to draw the line.
No. I'm not giving up on my 580s. They're still
Give
running.
it,
No.
Davy, go home.
No,
You're drunk. You're
my
drunk.
580s,
No,
and they're actually mining Flux right now with Mini Z, and I'm doing 18 sols, and they're long been paid for. They're good to go.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
so
that's okay. That's okay.
I was kind of joking a little because I mean, anybody that follows the BBT farm, I mean, we had a absolute ton. I mean, 2,500 of the Sapphire 470, 4 gig and 8 gigs, and I mean, they've been tried and true. They definitely took care of themselves. And we've had like 5 cycles of, tearing them apart, cleaning them, repasting them. They've been just absolute. They're like the S9s on the Bitcoin world side. They're just workhorses. They've worked forever. But yeah, I mean, as the innovation starts to come out and we start to see like the 4000 series come back, and obviously I think we're going to get a few days down the line here, and then the reality is going to set in on like, okay, what's the stack really looking like? And unless there's just crazy price discovery, which I think it'll settle for a bit, people will start to power down some stuff, and you're going to have this clean cycle for a little bit, and we'll see what's available. But we're going to try to keep focused on like this kind of stuff. What's the innovation? Where's the demand curve side that comes through it? And that I think gives us a really easy lend into what parallel assets. I want to talk about the additional incentive and mechanisms that are on these chains where you usually just the emission schedule's it, and what you see is what you get, and you roll the dice and good luck if there's a demand curve on it if you don't have any kind of extra utility. But you guys are doing something a little different. Can you, in layman's terms, explain what the parallel assets are and then kind of the different networks that are there? And just, I know a lot of our audience have asked questions related to parallel assets.
Okay, so the easiest way that I found to explain this, because parallel assets can be a little bit complex, right? Because the holy grail of blockchain is interchain operability, right? So to allow these multiple blockchains to interact. So Flux does a lot of things really well, but let's say they don't do. We're not a privacy asset. Let's say someone like Firo or someone like that, and the ability to interact with their chain would be important. So now we import that piece into it, or maybe it's ZK Snark rollups or something of that nature. So I look at it as like dual citizenship. Okay, so you have citizenship in the United States and you have citizenship in Canada. When you're in the United States, which Flux is the main chain, the proof of work main chain, right? You get all the trappings of being a United States citizen, right? I jump on an airplane and I go to Canada and I have dual citizenship in Canada. I now get all the trappings of being a Canadian citizen, okay? So I can easily move between these two. And as a matter of fact, other ones as well, because we have Flux, Binance Smart Chain, Flux ETH, Flux KDA, Flux Ergo, Flux Tron, and I'm missing one, Flux Solana. And we have a couple more that are going to be released this year. So why are parallel assets so important? Well, it kind of fixes the issue of interchain operability. Dan is a DGen and he loves DeFi, but he also loves Flux. So now I can have Flux on Solana or Binance Smart Chain or Ethereum and participate in liquidity pools or, maybe their DEX models or whatever it is. And whenever I want to come home, I simply go through Fusion. I come back to the main chain and I can deploy more infrastructure. So we did it a little bit different because there's a lot of platforms out there that rely on wrapping an asset. So they take like maybe wrapped BTC or wrapped ETH or whatever, but you're relying on a third party to essentially wrap that and audit the token to make sure that it's effective. Well, we've seen the last 3 months as we've got our ass kicked in DeFi, right? That's not always the best case. So we went directly natively to those chains and deployed natively on the chain. So, we deployed natively on Solana, all the different ecosystems. And that allows people really to participate in these different platforms, right? Interchain operability, it fixes a problem. And you can always come back to Flux. You can, if you get tired of a Uniswap or Pancake Swap or whatever fish swap you got out there, and you want to come back home again, you can easily do it. You jump back in and you come into Flux, the main chain.
Sushi Swap is what you were thinking of.
And those other, so the roadmap has a couple more that are coming up, but you guys haven't necessarily announced those, right? You guys announced those after so long. Or like, is it just a technical thing to where you're making sure, and there's a few candidates, and then one you're like, okay, we can absolutely accomplish this. Meaning, like, let's say hypothetically it's a UTXO implementation, you end up bringing on like Flux Raven,
which we just did. We did with Ergo. You know, we literally just deployed Ergo. Ergo went live today for claiming. So, you know, we did it, and you know, hey, I would be interested in Raven as well. I will tell you this: our focus has shifted as a community to focus more on proof of work. That's why we initially had picked up was it Polkadot, I believe it was, to deploy, and we sat around and we talked about it. And as this DeFi melee, because we picked Luna as one of and the Luna project itself wasn't a bad project. They were developing a lot of technology. They were very fast. They were very iterative. They happened to create a horrible mess, you know, but we were literally this close to deploying it. So people ask, what happens if you deployed Luna as a parallel asset and it collapsed? Well, the good news is you can always come back to the main chain of Flux or go to any one of our parallel networks. So, you know, and the next question is, well, would you just take Luna off as a parallel asset? No, we would do it just like a wallet. If I open up Zelcore, I've got all the active chains up there, right? All the active tokens, everything that's out there doing something. And I got some really weird old stuff. You know what I mean? It's hanging out in there. And, you know, who knows? Maybe Coinbase will list them because they're old enough where they can get a bag of them, right? So, you know, we would have moved to the next iteration. But yeah, our focus moving forward, I will tell you, I like to always give, they call me Leaky Dan. I like to leak things and let people know. But I will tell you that our next two projects that we're going to be adding as parallel assets will both be proof of work.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, when the first video we were talking about Flux recently, some folks were asking, a lot of people know that, you know, I've went on a couple of the Ravencoin like cruises, and like I think after hearing about it at the North American Bitcoin Conference in January of 2018, it was like about 8 days after it started, 7 days after it started, I went on there and I was like, hey, I heard about this project and I've liked Ravencoin's, you know, fair market launch. I like the asset stuff that they had going on there, but a lot of people have asked, you know, if Ravencoin was one of those, and that if a proof of work, and I was like, it's a UTXO. I don't know. I've looked at the other stuff that you guys have out there, and if there's like just some complexity with doing that, but then a couple of the other ones out there, you know, there's some older stuff, to your point, on that's been around for a while. We used to mine like Feathercoin back in the day, right? Feathercoin and Vertcoin, and you know, like some of these ones that were like good, general, community driven, you know, just people like that were trying to get into the space early, but just, you know, kind of died on the line, right? Innovation came and kind of pushed away from UTXO kind of coins, right? They went more EVM and more data rich environment. I've had to explain that a few times. Like I don't understand what happened to like Vertcoin or Feathercoin. It's like, well, you know, like the stacks kind of evolved, right? You've had these like the 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 kind of concept comes from capability and depth of field on, you know, scripting and all this other functionality that you can have. And if somebody's looking at the weighting of it, like, what do you have the most opportunity to solicit new development, more easier to learn languages, higher level languages, like, you know, like coding in Bitcoin's not easy, like, you know, and building in, you know, native, you know, if you're doing anything with the daemon and trying to build any kind of tooling, and you want to dust off your C++, and it's just harder, right? And it's a more focused kind of thing to where writing things. That's why a lot of these other you know, deployments have different client abilities. You know, like I know that's what made I say look at what Ethereum started with, and doing multi-client, which is a pain, baseline management and all that. But like having a Python instance, a Java instance, all those kind of things, because you get the new realm of the possible of development class that comes in and goes, you know, I can do this better. I can do this. Yes. And I think if anything, last night's merge, I'm telling you, I was probably as hard as anybody else on them, like making videos like, where's the testing on like OpenSea? Are all the NFTs going to freeze up? What's going to happen? I didn't see a lot of stuff, but there were some heavy carries by some developers in the shadows there that fixed a lot of stuff at the end and corrected stuff. And this thing kind of went off of the hitch. And it comes back down to, I look at it not as Ethereum as a whole, but their development core kind of saved them on doing some heavy carries.
They had 5 years to get ready for it, Carter.
Yeah.
If you can't get ready for it in 5 years, then you've got a problem, right? So, you know, and I agree with everything that you said. I think there is a ton of value there. And I will tell you, you know, our goal is always to target like-minded projects. You know, we were the very first platform to add Raven's asset class. We were the very we've deployed in Zelcore. Immediately, Raven was one of the first ones we added. We stood up decentralized block explorers, so you can run right now today on Flux. You got Raven block explorers that are completely decentralized, and we just recently, and Davy, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was last week, we deployed the Raven nodes. So you know, we're continuing to kind of bolster our skill set by going after like-minded projects. And although Raven, I don't necessarily know they love us, but you know, we love them because they're like the brother that just doesn't get along with us sometimes, but that's okay. We don't have to get along. We just have to have the eye on the prize, and that is whatever it is, you know, getting to the next iteration of technology.
For sure. So yeah, that's, and I think just some of that discovery on just using, you know, the parallel assets and understanding that, to kind of go back to parallel assets, of just understanding on how to move things around, all of that transitional stuff through Zelcore, right? Is that the app that we're talking about on converting the stuff through? Is that the only environment that you can kind of go back and forth between the assets if you're converting?
No, not really. Actually, you can actually use, there's an API that you can use right now. So if you don't want to go through Zelcore per se, you can use the API. You can use the API.
Yeah. What we're doing, Carter, is we're putting together a package for folks to deploy natively in their own platform. So let's hypothetically say that you'll see these in, you know, Fusion, the ability to claim parallel assets and maybe Guardia or Trust or, you know, other platforms, or maybe it's directly on, you know, a DEX model, you know, where you can swap between the parallel assets. You know, really the ultimate goal is, you know, this technology is iterative, and one would argue that Fusion has a bit of a centralization because it depends on Zelcore. And I wouldn't argue with that, but the ultimate goal is always to get to the next iteration. So you create your minimal viable product, you then deploy that minimal viable product, you have a functioning ecosystem, and then what you do is work on iterating it to the next level, which for us is always decentralized. So you'll absolutely be able to use that API process and that claiming process in other platforms as they develop.
But we're dealing with people, their money too, right? So we have to be safe at all times. We can't build a bridge and then go like, oh, whoops, yeah, sorry, a few million coins leaked through. That's we have to be clear that we can't do that stuff. And sometimes you need to take a step back to be able to move 2 steps forward. And I think Fusion is kind of that path that we took. Like, it is providing at this point for 7 PAs at this point, and you're collecting. If you've been mining Flux for like a year now, you've been collecting parallel assets, all 10 of them. So you might have looked like you were mining for, I don't know, a couple dollars, but you were actually mining for $4 at that point because you were actually collecting.
Flux is the only blockchain. The Flux is the only blockchain in existence where you mine in the past, the present, and the future. So, you know, and honestly, why is that important? That was a big focus of us because we wanted to enlist our miners as project partners, people that come and they'll just stay there and they'll continue to keep developing and supporting the network in perpetuity. Once they're there, they'll always be there. So we didn't look at miners as like useful idiots. I mean, that's basically what Ethereum did. They looked at the mining community as useful idiots. They used them till they didn't need them anymore, and they kicked them aside to go to a more centralized platform. we look at miners as business partners. We look at our node operators as business partners. And if they can build a business model, because it is no cheap, like, you know, for a fact, I watched the rigs that you build out. Those things are not cheap. You're putting a commitment into a project, and that commitment should yield you results yesterday, today, and tomorrow. You know what I mean? It should be across the board. So you're not only mining Flux, the native asset, as Davy kind of alluded to, you're mining Flux in 10 parallel assets that you can claim as you move forward.
But it allows us to integrate, right? Like, it allows us to integrate with other exchanges. You want to create a contract where you, I don't know, create something and you want to pay out in Flux. You can do that on Solana. You can do that on Ethereum. You can do that on Cadena. You can build a contract wherever you want and then still use Flux. You want to purchase something, you want to go purchase an NFT with Flux if somebody allows it to be purchased with it. Well, you have your Flux in your wallet, fusion it over and send it off. Yep. You can, it allows us to move faster where we want it to move faster. And where our block time is 2 minutes every 2 minutes we have a block. People say that's not fast. We don't need to be fast for what we're doing for our infrastructure. But if you want to go fast, you can. Yeah, you can go on Solana and
Cadena.
Go fast.
Don't Solana.
Yeah, if Solana's not down, let's say it that way.
Let's stick it to proof of work. But
yeah, so if you want to use Cadena to go fast and one of the chains there, you go there.
Solana, you can go fast until it doesn't go anymore.
Well, until it waits at the stoplight.
It's definitely learning the lesson of why Hal and Satoshi talked about cheap fees could have a problem with DDoS attacks, and I think they learned the lesson, unfortunately, there. That the cheapest fee structures do prevent somebody that wants to be malicious to do bad things. And I mean, to your point on like the crawl, walk, run strategy on like, nurturing it to an MVP. I mean, there's a concept I always have to, sometimes I talk on the channel when people are like, this project seems a little centralized or whatever. And I'm like, there's a thing about bootstrapping something. And I look at it like in the bootstrap phase, right? So in the beginning of anything that's really starting to work through not just its iterations to try to get to that MVP, but you have to kind of bootstrap something or at least have some nurturing and guardrails to try to get some of the capability out, then get feedback on that loop, and then it iterates out to the point that, okay, it can stand on its own. I akin it to like teaching a kid on a bike. Like you're not going to put them on the bike right away and be like, looks like you ain't going to get it, kid. You're going to stay behind them. You're going to help them get it going. But once they're going, the world is everywhere, and then they get to 13 and they're trying to ride dirt bikes. And then by the time they're 18, they're driving a motorcycle, right? So it's like, you got to crawl, walk, run it to nurture anything. Otherwise it won't develop right. And I think it's all the way down to the most simplest way of nurturing anything to where it can run. So I'm looking at it like, I always look at it like that. I think that incentives are a very interesting thing. And that's part of why I've always been like kind of anti like big, like built-in dev fees or any kind of like pre-mine that kind of bootstraps it, just because the incentives are wrong, right? And we've seen that through iterations through Ethereum, through kind of the foundation, and we've seen some of that kind of issues to where it's like when this thing goes, if you look at like who the initial stack of people were, once it got critical mass and it started to bounce, then they have certain people have the capital that they're like, they become like, oh, well, this is my idea. And you see that with Dr. Gavin Wood, and you saw that with Charles Hoskinson. They went and spun other projects, and that's fine. But like the original vision of that didn't stay together because they were already pre-bootstrapped, right? So it's like they already had the capital. They didn't have to really fight it. And then they wanted to go build their own and build other ecosystems. But it's subjective if things are working or not.
Well, what did Satoshi? What did Satoshi say? If you don't like it, fork it. Right. He knew that there was going to be an influx, no pun intended, of projects that didn't necessarily agree with the Bitcoin direction or where they were heading, and that there had to be spinoffs. So all the Bitcoin maximalists to say Bitcoin is it and that is it. I think they're missing the forest through the trees. I don't think they're seeing these awesome technologies that are being built around Bitcoin is a foundational piece, right? So I went to Bitcoin Miami, and man, was I disgusted. I left there and I was like, I can't believe that I went to the biggest Bitcoin conference and there was literally no talk about development of the platform. It's proof of work, ASIC mining, straight on, and everything else goes to hell. And, an entire second floor with nothing but people that were building the financial sector is like, how do we use the asset?
Oh,
Did we lose him?
Nope, we got him. You're back.
Is he?
I broke up. Yeah, I broke up there for a minute. Sorry,
Yeah,
the VPN decided I was on too long. So, but anyway, it really kind of broke my heart, because I think that we've got to get back to looking at proof of work fundamentally. We have to look at how it's being utilized. I'm watching the chat over here, and we do this as a community, a proof of work community. We always are shilling our own bags. Why this product is better than this product. Why Caspa is better than Flux. Why Raven's better than, Caspa. Why, Ergo's better than Raven. Just stop. We don't have to. A rising tide brings all boats, up. Let's work together on the next iteration. And just like those parallel assets that we have, where we have interchain operability, proof of work can work together to get to the next iteration. We've been demonized. I got the come and take it shirt, right? Why is that? Well, the Biden administration comes out and says, they want to outlaw proof of work. Well, if proof of work gets outlawed, then I'm an outlaw, right? The day that happens, because I'm not going to stop mining and I'm not going to stop running my nodes, So we all need to get to the next version of whatever this technology is, right? Working together. Ours happens to be a solution for proof of use of work, but we could easily continue to see these ecosystems building each other up instead of tearing each other down. So stop talking shit. Stop talking about who's better than what and how and who. We're all doing something different. Ergo isn't Flux. Caspa isn't Flux. Raven isn't Flux, right? Every one of them's doing something unique. And that's what we have to get down to. We have to figure that out. So I had to go on my little tirade there, Carter. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good and healthy.
Let it out, Dan. Let it out.
Well, no, because we've seen it with this merge, right? I told Son of Tech, who's floating around in there somewhere. I told him, man, thank God this is over, right? Because I have seen nothing but tribalistic attacks by community members. And we, as technology leaders, every single one of us, Carter, you included, every single one of us should be talking about how we can better the technology and how we can make it greener. I know it's crazy. Everybody, immediately cringes when you say the word greener, but we can be, and we will be, and we have to get that next iterative technology. And I think the only way you do that is working together as a team.
Yeah. And I cover this quite a bit, and especially since we're actively building a Bitcoin farm. And yes, there are, we're in Illinois, there's a lot of excess, not solar, but wind power. They built the wind here, power through a lot of subsidies, and there's just a lot of windmills turned off. So we're able to take advantage of some cost structure because of that, because they overbuilt. But those narratives of just the building piece is the key piece. When you would go to previous, North American Bitcoin, 2014, it was how do we build services in this space? How do we start to integrate a decentralized version of what true DeFi was supposed to be? And the narrative kind of shift, right? The narrative shift, right? Like it started going. And I don't know if it was Samson. I don't know if it was Charlie. I don't know who it was that really that created that kind of toxicity. I know that they had a couple, it was the Monero dude, Fluffy Pony, Samson, and Charlie would have their little talk. And it was literally like The View, but for Bitcoin, right?
Yeah,
And I was
no,
like,
yeah,
this
absolutely.
isn't good. Like, I don't talk crap on all these. And I like, people are like, dude, you've been around for a long time. You know all these folks. You've been like, I've been in this community and space since late 2010. I was on the forums back in those days. My first post was out there, actually still when Satoshi was writing out there. And the reason why I'm not in that part of the crowd is because I don't like that narrative. Like, I'm a builder. I'm a participant person that likes to see other people participate. And circumstantially, there's a token that's worth money in this space. And we've built an ecosystem around that because it can be a complementary coexistence with critical
Amen.
infrastructure and things out there, right? So I think this is the crawl, walk, run on that critical infrastructure opportunity. And it's this thing that people can, like, once it's running, they're looking and they go, wait a minute here, this is typical systems architecture. Well, maybe I can do it over here. And then they'll start to crawl, walk, run it into there, and then start to see this thing, not just take market share from that space, but really provide this, bootstrap this environment where people can start to be, their own host with it. And it changes the entire way the stack works. And that's the people and the focus that I always wanted to be around. I don't want to be out there. I haven't been to Bitcoin 20. I didn't go to any of them so far.
You
this
didn't
year,
miss
actually,
anything, I'm telling you.
We didn't go to really anything. I missed Miners Disrupt. I wanted to do that, but I was just like, this is just, it's not the right tone and the right messaging. And I would just rather focus on, making sure people know what's in this space to participate. And that's, I think that's better energy use and cost and time use. But
Amen.
It's good to hear that. And it's good to hear that perspective. I think it's refreshing for folks that are listening right now that are especially, very, just tired of seeing all that heavy marketing, like, we're better than this. And it's like, hey, okay, cool story, bro. But, like, what can I do with it?
What problem do you solve? Because, web 2 or legacy infrastructure, legacy finance, it works. But the problem is we know that it doesn't work, right? So, we have to create solutions. We don't create more problems. And often, much like, you kind of alluded to, we're our own worst enemies, right? So instead of staying where you're planted, finding a project and building on that project, we're jumping from project to project to project to project to catch the next piping hot S coin, right? Stop what you're doing. If you grow in place, now imagine, Carter, going all the way back to when you first got into Bitcoin, you stayed with Bitcoin and you kept developing all the way up through that, you'd be in a pretty good situation right now. And I'm sure you are. I chose to, because I had a very large mining facility, and, I was in, you were probably in a little bit before me, but I was in kind of like right after you. And I have since sold all my rigs, deployed them for nodes, and I have some cards hashing here and there, but mostly it's node infrastructure. But I made a commitment, and that was find a project that you believe in and believe in the community, you believe in the people, and you put your time, talents, and effort into that particular project. And if you build that project out, it will reap windfalls in the long run. So amen.
Sorry, my mic was bent. It builds that community that people can build and operate around and contribute. And like any other active team, if you find the thing you're passionate and love about, you never work a day in your life type of thing again from that point on. And I think that people find this space that can do it, right, and then can find some level of participation in it that, most people have, like, their side hustle or working their day job, and that works. Continue to work your day job, do your passion until that point that you can transition. And that's effectively what I've done for years, working both things and doing stuff and then having the channel and trying to teach people. But at the end of the day, this is the passion.
You're a grinding dude, man. There's a lot. I mean, I'm a grinder too, man. I'm everywhere and anywhere, right? And I've come across you so many times. I was like, as a matter of fact, when Davy said we were going to have a chat with you, I was like, it's about damn time. You know what I mean? Like, we've been both grinding in the space for so long. And just imagine the people that you've introduced to these different platforms. I saw somebody in chat say that they met me at Bitcoin Miami and I introduced them to Flux. you don't know who you reach out and who you touch. We're kind of like, evangelists of the space. This is our job. We've got to go out there and shepherd all of these folks to the promised land, right? So we know what that promised land looks like. It's completely decentralized. It's interchain operable. It's, we're using technologies, we're borrowing technologies from each other, and we're growing holistically across the board. So,
and I think this really gets kind of towards the end, and a really good segue towards the last few things I had, which is if somebody's watching this and they watch the recast, and a lot of our stuff, I don't get a ton usually on the live stream, and we got 324 people, and I value all of you for watching this, guys. Thank you. But we do get quite a bit of folks that catch it later or listen over time. If they're wanting to get into this space, be it a crawl, walk, run, they're still working their normal day job, they want to put a few hours into it. How and what is one of the best ways for them to either get with the community, do some tutorials? I mean, you guys have a YouTube site with a whole bunch of different videos, tutorials. Yep. Where are those things at for them to be able to get engaged with Flux?
So if you really want to if you want to deploy and you want to start learning, runonflux.io. Run on Flux runs on Flux, by the way. So that's kind of cool. We have a lot of websites that are running on Flux now as it is. You can always join our Discord. We have a very vibrant, and I would say almost over the top community in terms of helping people. We like to see people deploy infrastructure. The nice thing about Flux is we've created this kind of niche so that if you have 50 Flux and you want to participate in our shared Titan on-chain Titan nodes, you can do that. If you want to run, one of our enterprise nodes, it's 1,000, 1,250, 40,000 Flux to deploy on that node. Maybe you want to mine and you're mining Flux and parallel assets and you're participating in DeFi. So we really honestly put our emphasis around the utility base of the asset, so we didn't create some gas model, some BS gas model that ran, you got to have the asset and then you got a gas model that stakes and all this other stuff. No, it is Flux. Flux is king on our infrastructure. So, I just recommend you, if you're a programmer and you're sitting out there and you're like, boy, I would love to get involved, but I don't understand Web3. We don't care. Our best programmers that work with the project came from the standard tech stack. They knew nothing about blockchain. And as a matter of fact, literally our best people came from that. So get involved, start to research. We have a great wiki. We have, we're very deep with ways to do it. Excellent videos on our Flux Lab YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at runonflux. If you want to follow me and listen to my rants and diatribes, it's at DAK_Flux. I just come in and meet the community, because we're not tribalistic. Whether you're a Raven or an Ergo fan or a Caspa fan or whatever it is, come work with Flux. We don't care. We're glad to see you improve your work, and that's all that matters.
Davy, you want to say some things as we wrap up here?
Yeah, we even have Tech Doofus streaming Monday, Wednesday, every evening.
Doofus is awesome too, by the way.
Doofus is awesome. If
you want to learn...
he teaches you how to deploy something on Flux. He
built a Docker.
One of the things he was deploying, and so I saw that in the chat, it was a Doom server or something, like the game Doom. Yeah, he built a Docker on the fly, on the stream, everything live. He basically is coding something, a website. What was it? A Hello Kitty thing where he was grabbing somewhere else things from cats, whatever. But he shows everything. You can hop in on the Discord. The team is there. I'm there. Dan's there. You can talk to us. There's a ton of folks in the community support itself. So the community themselves supporting others. Moed is one of the guys. I was talking to him this morning. He's helping a ton of people. But dude, I'll put that caveat in there because that's the reason I was talking to Moed. When you do come on the Discord and you're asking for help, be careful, people. Be really careful. People won't DM you. And if people are DMing you, be very careful.
Many scammers. So many scammers.
Yeah, it's part of that ecosystem we live in. I mean, anybody gets Twitter botted and everything else. I mean, nobody's giving away free stuff. So it's just maybe some knowledge. Don't give your
and
keys
nobody of the team will ever ask for any private keys ever.
Yep.
Right.
So Carter, do you remember CryptoKitties?
Oh, God.
Oh yeah, I have some. Yeah,
okay,
the day of the launch, it froze up.
Yeah, well, you could deploy CryptoKitties on Flux. So let's make CryptoKitties great again. Let's deploy them on Flux.
There you go. Yeah, I think my latest like NFT kind of thing that I got into for a little bit there was that Zed Run with the horse racing thing, because I just thought that was a little innovative to be able to pitch. I like the basic game theory on that, where you could have a random set of features and then you could pitch yours against other folks. And I was like, okay, I see where this could go. I think it runs on Matic. But it's that's an interesting thing. But that's more that like integrated Web3 kind of run on chain kind of aspect. I think where Flux really kind of stands apart is I could take legacy stacks and I can deploy it now on Web3, and it's like a whole other perspective of opportunity, because you already have like all this sunk, space. I akin it to almost like there's a lot of gas stations on, everywhere throughout every corner. And eventually they're going to have charging stations at every one of them, right? So it's like you can still take some of that legacy as you crawl, walk, run transitionally over. And I can't wait to start to deploy some stuff on this and see what's in the realm of possible from it.
Well, I'll tell you what, any help that we can give you, man, we're glad to step up and help you out.
And to go back to the legacy piece too, and next week myself and Dan are flying, and we're going to be talking to some larger companies in Europe, and they're still in that. We have that old. They have some cloud computing. They have their servers still in a data center themselves as well, and they're now interested. Okay, so how do we now expand ourselves and make ourselves a little bit more decentralized, because we don't want to go down again because AWS was down, or we don't want to go down because Google is down. And they want to be able to,
or we want to reduce our costs by like 80%.
And that too.
And
that too. So they're interested. So it's coming right now, and we're flying out there to talk to these folks. So it shows you how we take this as well, how important it is to us as well. But I want to go back to, because I saw one person in the chat earlier asking something about whitelisting, and why do I have to whitelist my app? As you alluded to as well, Carter, we have to be careful on what we deploy at this point still, right? It's still new. Yes, we've been there for a while, but we have to protect our folks who are hosting things and etc. So we do whitelist. And is that annoying? Yes. Is that something will change? Also, yes.
Yes. XDAO 2.0. It's coming.
Yeah, we're gonna make it so that the community can say, okay, that's okay, or no. But at this point, we do whitelist, and that's to protect everybody.
Yeah, I mean, there's we could almost have our own video on stuff like related to OFAC or any other kind of regulatory environment out there that can come in and take a good thing or good intentions and kind of really kill it quickly if it's not vetted. And there's a difference, and I think that's, some folks are never going to see eye to eye with that, and it is what it is. But that being said, the best thing we can do is provide, the whole community can provide an understanding of why certain things like that are occurring, especially depending where you're at, geographically and what countries and stuff. But some things you just have to be compliant. I mean, I remember a old school conversation like Eric Voorhees when they had to move out of with Shapeshift out of New York, and it's like
I remember that.
They didn't want to do it. They're like, we're trying to be decentralized. We wanted you to be able to use the Jax wallet and convert your assets, but essentially we're being an MSB and we have to register, and we have all these rules that, it's an unfortunate set of circumstances. I think that's why legislation that's out there, Senator Loomis, some of the stuff when it comes to like the is critical from an industry government affairs stuff that like Coin Center and a few of them that are doing from industry and government affairs to try to make sure that we have like a safe harbor type of thing to where you got to have innovation. If everything's on rails and everything's roads, you can find sometimes a faster path to make things over. You're driving, you're like, oh, the law says this, but I could cut right through here. We need the capacity to be able to have those events. And so what ends up happening is most of the time people just make a decision and choose to be an outlier and take that chance. And then you end up having stuff like the RIAA back in 2000 when they were trying to nail everybody for Napster. And then eventually the companies were like, wait a minute here, this is some pretty cool tech. We could start streaming stuff and making money doing it that way. And like, there needs to be a space where people can nurture that space. And I think that's where that kind of goes. So I understand the way you guys are doing it. I think it's just educating people of why certain decisions like that are made and being transparent about it and saying, hey, here, we got to follow this particular thing because otherwise we should get shut down and all this stuff that we're talking about, we can't operate. But you can have a roadmap item that gets you there. And there could be some other alternative stuff that gets deployed to where it becomes a little more, asymmetrical in the way it's deployed. And now it's not so tied to a particular thing. And now you have a living, breathing system that is, censorship resistant and all those type of things. And then we'll see where the space goes. So I think just people just keep developing and pushing, the boundaries with good intentions is a thing, right? And we need to make sure that remains a thing. So I just think that's just education, but both to the communities and to government and leadership out there. Like you got to be able to push the boundaries on stuff. So things like safe harbor and stuff like that, I think are critical to keeping the space for that.
Amen. Amen, brother.
I agree.
Excellent, my dudes. Well, I want to, thank you. We had, 300 plus out there. We've seen some stuff. I know, there's a few people out there that posted some super chats. Thank you, my dudes. I always respond to a lot of that stuff down in the comments below after it. This has been awesome. Thanks, guys, for making the time to come on to this. I think I try to give you a lot. I mean, I always talk a lot, so I try to give you guys time to speak. So it was good.
It was Dan talking.
I give, Dan likes to talk, you know what I mean? So, I thank you, Carter. And I thank, one thing that I can say is that I've seen, especially in the YouTube scenario where people, the producers, whether it's you or Son of Tech or DJ Minds or Hobby Minus, to whoever it is, you guys have done an amazing job of educating users of what the next post ETH scenario was. So if there was anything super successful that came out of this, is all the new faces that are coming to these projects with a deep level of education because you guys were out there and putting it in front of them. So I appreciate every single one of you and you got what you guys do. I know it's a thankless job. It's a constant grind, but you guys are our first line of education. So thank you and thank all the all the folks and I appreciate you having us on today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've told these guys for a long time. I mean, for a little bit there from 2013 to 2015, it was myself and like maybe two other channels. So this massive amount of channels that have came on and have done very, very successfully. I'm like, thank you guys. Cause it is a lot. Like you try to cover a lot of stuff and it's great to see this content. I was on there with Son of Tech last night on the ETH merge. I didn't want to like compete with like the viewership. I was glad to be on there with those guys and help them where I can, just from my piece of knowledge of what I'm tracking. But everybody is just amazingly researched and smart in their particular areas. I've learned things from, when I'm looking at stuff or looking up settings most of the time these days, this isn't just observing and reporting myself. I'm out there looking at what they're doing. So
I do thank them too. Now. Yeah, I'm learning. I'm learning every day. Hey, real quick, because I've seen a lot of it in your chat. Ethereum proof of work. All I got to say about that is Justin Sun. So if you guys think, don't chase S coins, guys, come on. There's plenty of projects. There's Flux, there's Raven, there's Erga, there's Caspa, there's, Nyoxa. There's different projects that you guys can mine and put your emphasis behind them. So don't do it. Just like the Michael Jordan meme, get help.
Yeah, for sure. All right, my dudes. It was good. Well, we're signing off, and thanks everybody that was tuning in tonight. Hopefully this was good for you guys, and we'll definitely be having more, especially doing the deep dive on deploying some nodes and stuff. So we'll catch you guys